Well, good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for our virtual town hall tonight. I'm State Senator Jason Lewis, and I have the privilege of representing the communities of Malden, Melrose, Reading, Stoneham, Wakefield, and part of Winchester. I also serve as the Senate Chair of the Joint Committee on Education, along with several other committees that I'm members of in the state legislature. I want to thank Paul Albright from my staff who organized tonight's town hall. So the plan is we have an hour, and if we need more time, we can even go a little bit longer. But I'm going to kick things off with a brief kind of three-part update. The first part will be just some of the major legislation that the state Senate and in some cases the entire legislature has taken up so far this year. Then I'll give you a preview of some very important issues and legislation that I see coming up on Beacon Hill in the coming months. And then finally, I just want to give a few local project updates that are happening in our communities. So again, thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate having the chance to answer your questions and hear your feedback for me. The way this is going to work is that you should type your comments, your questions, your feedback into the chat, and you can do that at any time as we're going along this evening. And then Paul will display your questions on the screen, so everybody will be able to see them, and then I'll certainly do my best to answer them. And certainly you can always follow up with me in my office afterwards if you want to dig deeper into a particular issue, or if there was any follow-up you wanted to discuss with us. So the first thing I wanted to just briefly mention is some of the important pieces of legislation that we've been working on and have passed so far this year. The first bill I want to mention deals with funding for our local transportation infrastructure, roads, bridges, sidewalks. It's known as the Chapter 90 bill. And both branches passed that bill. And in fact, we had a bill signing with Governor Healy in Melrose last week. We were very excited to welcome the governor and the lieutenant governor, and we had a bill signing hosted by Mayor Grigoritis right outside Melrose City Hall. And that bill provides hundreds of thousands of dollars to each of our communities across the state, for these local transportation improvements, which they'll put to good use this spring, summer, and fall. Second group of bills I want to mention are bills that have passed both the state Senate and the State House of Representatives and are now pending in conference committees, which is where bills pass both branches, but there are some differences between them. So a conference committee is appointed to hopefully reconcile the differences and get a final bill to the governor's desk. The first of those bills deals with gun violence prevention and strengthening our state's gun safety laws. Though that bill passed the House late last year, passed the Senate earlier this year, there's a lot in that bill addressing ghost guns, strengthening our state's red flag law, number of other areas. There's a lot of overlap between the House and Senate, but some differences. And again, that's being worked out in a conference committee. So I'm hopeful we'll get a final bill to the governor soon. The other bill that's passed both branches and is in a conference committee is a bill that seeks to maximize the amount of federal grant funding that the state of Massachusetts can receive. Congress and thanks to President Biden's leadership, has passed the Inflation Reduction Act, a major bipartisan infrastructure bill, the CHIPS and Science Act, in the last couple of years. And these bills include a lot of competitive grant money that states can apply for. But many of these grants require local matches from the state. So the bill that we passed sets our state up to have a fund ready with the matching money so that we can best position ourselves to secure as much of that federal money as possible to invest in our state. So that's pretty exciting. Then I want to mention several bills that have passed in the state Senate but have yet to be taken up in the House of Representatives. So hopefully they will be in the months ahead. The first is what we call the Early Ed Act. It's also sometimes referred to as the Common Start Bill, and I'm proud to be the lead sponsor of this bill, and I also helped lead its passage through the state Senate as the Senate Education Committee chair. And it's a major piece of legislation that seeks to make early education and childcare much more affordable and accessible for all of our families, as well as supporting our early education providers and our early education workforce. The state Senate also passed the Healthy Youth Act, which deals with sex ed in our schools, making sure it's age appropriate and medically accurate and inclusive. It's actually not the first time that the state Senate has passed this bill, and so we are very hopeful that it will get across the finish line finally this legislative session. And then lastly, the state Senate also very recently passed several consumer protection bills, and the most notable of those deals with third-party electricity suppliers, which unfortunately have a very poor track record of preying on vulnerable people, especially seniors and low-income folks, and have scammed really hundreds of millions of dollars from Massachusetts residents in their electric bills. So we're looking to address that issue, and the Attorney General of Massachusetts has been very vocal on the need to take action. So those are bills that have already been passed in the state Senate. I want to now turn to some major bills that we are working on, and I expect will come to the floor and pass in the remaining months of this legislative session, which essentially wraps up at the end of July. So first is the fiscal year 25 state budget. The state budget is over $50 billion, and it's the most important single piece of legislation that legislators work on each year. The House of Representatives passed their version of the budget in April, and the state Senate Ways and Means Committee, which I'm a member of, actually earlier today released our version of the FY25 budget. And so I'll be very busy working with my team to file amendments to the budget, which are due by Friday. And then we'll be debating the budget the week of May 20th. And then we will reconcile the differences between the House and Senate in the month of June. So the biggest part of the state budget is our Medicaid or Mass Health program, which provides healthcare for well over 1 million residents of the state. And the second biggest part of the budget is our public school funding, which is known as the Chapter 70 program, and very important to all of our communities. And then there are literally hundreds of other programs and initiatives that are funded through the state budget, covering transportation, workforce development, housing programs, environmental sustainability, and many, many other areas. So anyone who has questions about the budget or feedback, certainly do so tonight, but also feel free to follow up with us in the days ahead as we focus on the state budget. Next is housing. We have a major challenge in our state, and especially in our greater Boston area, with housing that's affordable to young people, to middle income and working families, to seniors who want to downsize. And this has been a problem that's been growing over the years and has gotten to really a crisis level. So I'm looking forward to the state Senate taking up an over $4 billion housing bond bill that Governor Healy has proposed, and I appreciate her leadership on this issue. And that bill will also include some significant policy pieces as well. For example, a proposed local option real estate transfer fee to help provide more funding for affordable housing development, and other policies, again, some of which may come up tonight, happy to talk about, but that's also a very high priority for me personally and for the state legislature. We'll also be taking up in the Senate another major climate bill, and that's been an area of leadership for our state. I'm very hopeful that this upcoming climate bill will include efforts to address our plastics crisis. We're drowning in single-use plastics. They are, filling up, our incinerators, landfills, littering our beaches and parks, and getting into our waterways and into our food supply. And we really need to take action to address single-use plastics. I'm proud to be the co-chair of the Zero Waste Caucus in the state legislature, and addressing the issue of plastic pollution is one of our top priorities. Another major bill that we'll be taking up soon is related to economic development. This is also another priority for the governor and relates to continuing to advance our state's leadership in life sciences and biosciences, clean energy and clean tech, and well as the workforce needs we have to serve, all of our different industries in Massachusetts. So looking forward to passage of that legislation. And then finally, I do expect us to pass another bill this session related to healthcare. We continue to be very concerned, about the situation with Steward Health and their financial situation. They just declared bankruptcy. And just in general, the continually growing costs of healthcare for families and small businesses, as well as the workforce shortages, the capacity issues we've been seeing in our emergency rooms, and people trying to access primary care, mental health care. So this is a major priority for us as well. The state Senate last year passed a bill addressing the high cost of prescription drugs. But we know there's much more we need to continue to do to improve access to high quality, affordable healthcare. So plenty of other issues that we can certainly talk about, but those were the major ones I wanted to touch on. In terms of some local updates, I wanted to make sure folks know that recently we had a very exciting groundbreaking in Malden at the site of the former Malden Hospital. And that was to start the construction of a brand new world-class behavioral health hospital, which is a project being led by Tufts Healthcare. And this will be, when it opens its doors next year, I think we're aiming for the summer or fall of next year, will provide a significant increase in capacity for mental health care for folks of all ages, from teens all the way to geriatric care. And it's an area we have a desperate need for more services, and to have that right in our community, serving this region with high quality care, both inpatient and outpatient, is very exciting. And so we expect, again, that new hospital will be opening next year. And that's been a very long journey we've been on for many, many years to bring that project to fruition. Another exciting project that hopefully we'll be cutting the ribbon on is the new Winchester Center commuter rail station. And that we expect the station to be partially reopening this summer and to be fully complete by the end of this year. And that will provide excellent transit service for certainly residents of Winchester, but also surrounding communities as well, who will make use of that station. We also have a lot of school building projects that have been making great progress. The brand new Stoneham High School is on track to open in September for the new school year. We're going to be celebrating a groundbreaking for the new Wakefield High School, I believe next week or very, very soon. We also have the Northeast Regional Vocational Technical School, which is underway. Construction is underway there as well. And that will provide, the new school will have increased capacity for just provide vocational technical education for students from our entire region. And we also have the two elementary schools, the Lynch School in Winchester and the Killam School in Reading, both of which are also moving through the MSBA process in order to partner with the state to build, to renovate and build new schools. So I'm going to stop there, and now really look forward to your questions for me and any feedback you want to provide. So again, just type into the chat your comments, questions, feedback. Paul Albright from my team will display it on the screen, and I will be able to see it and do my best to answer your questions and respond to your feedback. So Paul, what do we have? All right. Great. So our first question, thank you, Sherry, relates to literacy. And Sherry points out the very concerning, statistic about the number of fourth graders that are, proficient in reading. As I think everyone's probably aware, there's, nothing more important to, setting our youngest students on a path to not just academic success, but really life success than to be proficient readers and writers. So we are very concerned about this issue. Even before the pandemic, we were not, I don't think we were where we need to be, even though Massachusetts is one of the top states in the country for our public schools. And, the pandemic definitely made things even worse. So, Sherry, the way I would answer your question is kind of threefold. We are certainly continuing to increase funding, for public schools. We're continuing to implement what's known as the Student Opportunity Act, which I was proud to help lead back in 2019. And that is providing more resources for public schools to do multiple different things, but included in that certainly is to improve their early literacy programs. We are seeing, many of our school districts, using their resources, in that way to improve their curriculum for early literacy, to make sure it's evidence-based, also for professional development for their educators and administrators, and so on. The second piece of this, I think, is really what I talked about earlier, which is really trying to transform our early education and care system so that, many, many more young children and families have access to really high quality early education, starting at a very young age. Because we know that if very young children get, access to literacy, vocabulary, books, when they are very young, 1-year-old, 2-year-old, certainly when they get into preschool, that will set them up for, better success in their kindergarten, first grade, in their elementary school years. So again, that's a very high priority, and I'm very proud, of the bill that the Senate has passed in this space, working with the Common Star Coalition. And then the third piece of this is that I do think that we need to move all of our school districts, to using really high quality early literacy curriculum. And we know from extensive research now what works well and what doesn't. So one of the things that's very likely to be included in the state budget is dedicated funding for early literacy, and that would be money that would be used to make grants, to school districts that use that money to invest in improving their curriculum, adopting evidence-based early literacy curriculum, using that for training and professional development, for their educators and staff. And we're also going to be ensuring that our teacher preparation programs are making sure that their candidates that they're preparing to become teachers are really learning, the best way to be teaching literacy. So those are all efforts underway, and certainly hope that collectively that will make a really meaningful difference in improving, opportunities for our youngest students to be proficient readers and to get better outcomes. All right, what do we have? Let's see. Trudy has a question about the updating the bottle bill. Yes. Bills beyond plastic. Oh, okay. So we have several questions and comments related to bills that would deal with issues of plastic and waste. And I really appreciate you all bringing this up. As you know, I mentioned in my opening remarks that I'm proud to be the co-founder, co-chair of what we call the Zero Waste Caucus, which deals with a wide range of waste, solid waste issues. But our 3 priority bills in the caucus are, number one, to update the state's bottle bill, which is totally antiquated. What hasn't been updated since the 1980s. We absolutely need to get that done and include, other types of beverage containers, increase the amount of the deposit, improve the redemption process. So I'm very hopeful that the updated bottle bill will, potentially be included in the Senate's climate bill. So we're hopeful. I'm hopeful for that, and I'm pushing for that. And then I'm also very hopeful that a bill to reduce the use of single-use plastics, plastic bags, polystyrene, nip bottles, food serviceware, and so on, which moved favorably out of the Environment Committee. It's based on a bill that I filed along with Representative Socolo. My colleague, Senator Roush, has been a great champion on this issue, as well as many of my colleagues. I'm also very hopeful that a version of that bill is also going to be become part of the climate bill that is being worked on very actively right now in the state Senate. So hopefully, we'll have a climate bill that we'll debate. I'm sure that'll have a lot of different provisions to it, but hopefully part of that will include potentially the updated bottle bill and addressing single-use plastics. So certainly that's what I'm pushing for. I know many of my colleagues are. I greatly appreciate all the different advocates like Beyond Plastics and the wonderful Plastic-Free Mask Coalition that has formed, that's advocating for these bills to pass. All right, Vivian has a question about the CARE bill, an act to promote racially inclusive curriculum in our schools. Thank you, Vivian. Another really important issue that you're raising. And I'm proud to have, helped work with advocates, especially in Malden, but from other communities as well in drafting the original version of this legislation last session. And then it's continued to evolve from there this session. And I've been working very closely with Representative Altrino on this bill, as he is the lead sponsor of this session. So we have a variety of bills that were in the Education Committee this session related to how to promote and support greater diversity, equity, and inclusion, in our public schools. This is definitely a priority for us in Massachusetts. We want to make sure that every student, regardless of their background, their ethnicity, their race, their religion, their language, their immigrant status, that they feel safe and welcome and included, and they can learn and thrive in all of our public schools. And certainly a part of that is having an inclusive curriculum. A part of that is having more diverse educator workforce, so that students will see and benefit from teachers who have a similar background and share culture with them. And so we do also have a bill. It's often referred to as the Educator Diversity Act, and I'm proud to be the lead Senate sponsor of that bill. That bill is moving forward in the legislative process. We have a lot of great supporters for the Educator Diversity Act. And so I'm hopeful that a final version of that bill, when it hopefully if it comes to the floor of the Senate and the House, will include, not just provisions to support greater diversity and more young people of color and different backgrounds entering, the educator teaching profession, but will also continue to support our efforts to have curriculum and professional development that is racially and ethnically and culturally inclusive for all of our students. So thanks very much for your work on this issue and on the CARE bill, and we'll keep working together on it. All right, let's see. Hi, Jennifer. Good to see you. So I think you're referring to need any choice for cheaper rate. So I think you may be expressing a concern here about the bill that the Senate passed. You need any choice for cheaper rate. So here's what I would say. I've definitely heard from constituents, who want us to keep allowing the sale of residential, competitive energy suppliers in the state. And I understand that. I know there are some people who manage to, navigate all the fine print and make sure that, they can keep their rate as low as possible, for their electricity, and they are able to switch suppliers when those rates go up. I understand that. Unfortunately, the problem is that the majority of people that are, using these competitive electric suppliers are, and we've seen this now for many years, are not saving money. In fact, they're being scammed, by these companies because they are unfortunately predatory, and they target seniors, they target low-income folks, people with language barriers. They, attract them with what appears to be a low rate for their cost of their electricity, and then they lock them in. The rate goes up, and they end up paying a lot more than they would have, if they had just stayed with National Grid or Eversource, or better than that, if they were part of a, community aggregation program, which fortunately many of our communities now have, municipal aggregation programs, which is I think the best way to purchase your electricity. So that's why we made that decision. It was not an easy one, and we, we're following, many years of research on this and studies that have been done by the Attorney General and others, that just showed there really hundreds of millions of dollars that unfortunately, these companies have cost residents of the Commonwealth. All right. Let's see. Wendy has a question about large family childcare homes. My question's around those changes. Can you update me? I think what you may be asking here is about the Early Ed Act that we passed in the state Senate. So that is, as I mentioned in my opening remarks, we did pass what we refer to in the state Senate as the Early Ed Act back in March. And that is essentially the latest version of what some folks know as the Common Start Bill. And I've been personally working on this bill with a number of advocacy organizations for many years. And the Senate actually passed a version of the bill also last session. So we've been very committed to it. That bill is now pending in the House of Representatives. So we are waiting to see if the House will take up the bill. But what's also very exciting, the House of Representatives, when they debated and passed their fiscal year 25 state budget in April, they not only included a lot more funding for early ed, which is terrific, but they also included some provisions that the Senate had put in our bill. They included those in their budget. And the state Senate budget that came out today also includes various provisions from the Early Ed Act in our budget. So it is very possible that the final budget, which will be wrapped up hopefully by the end of June, will essentially put into law all of the main provisions of the Early Ed Act, and it effectively would do the same thing as, the Senate, the House taking up the bill and passing it, and then getting that onto Governor Healey's desk separately. So, this is an example where there's kind of multiple paths to get the same outcome. But very hopeful that we will get this legislation done. It would help tremendously our early education and care providers, including family child care providers like yourself. Thank you so much for what you do for our children and families. It would also certainly help our center-based providers. It would do a lot to support improved pay and benefits and career professional development for our early educator staff. And we're also looking to expand eligibility so that more families, middle-income families, can also start to qualify for subsidies to make the cost of childcare more affordable, since we know it's so expensive for families right now. All right, see what we have next. All right, Joni has a question here about the MBTA 3A, comment on the constitution of the state mandate on towns, and local zoning. Okay, so thank you very much for this question. I'm actually, in addition to being the state senator for our district, I'm also an elected town meeting member in my hometown, which is Winchester. And at the beginning of town meeting, the first session last week, this issue came up, and I actually spoke on the floor of town meeting, explaining my support for the town complying with this new law. And I also did vote for it, when it was in the legislature a number of years ago. So for those who are not familiar with this, basically this goes back to the comments I made earlier about the housing crisis we're facing in the greater Boston area. We basically have not been building enough housing, at all different price points and different types of housing for several decades now. We used to build a lot more housing in the 1950s, 60s, and 70s, but we haven't been in recent decades. So as a result, everybody knows basic, economics 101. If we have limited supply and the demand continues to grow because the population, has been growing in this area, costs are going to go up. So we've seen that rent has really gone through the roof, and it is increasingly difficult to purchase a home. So this is pricing out young people who are graduating from our wonderful colleges and universities. There's lots of job opportunities. They want to stay and raise their family in this area, but they can't find housing that they can afford. So we're seeing increasingly larger numbers of young people leaving the state. We also seniors, it's very hard for them to downsize and find the right housing so they can stay here and enjoy their retirement years. And of course, for middle income families, teachers, firefighters, nurses, and all these folks that are critical to our community, the vitality of our communities also struggle. So we have to take steps, to address it. And the state legislature, under prior Governor Baker, who was a Republican governor, and now under Maura Healey, a Democratic governor, this has been very bipartisan. Actually, we have been taking steps at the state level to improve opportunities for housing to be built. That includes updates to zoning codes, and also providing more funding for housing programs, for tax credits, for public housing, and so on. And that's how this new law, which is known as the MBTA Communities Act, came about. It was passed a number of years ago, signed into law by Governor Baker, and it simply requires that all communities that are served by the MBTA have a certain area within the community that allows multifamily housing by right. This is something that is required, that communities comply with it. It is definitely, constitutional that the state can have mandates around zoning. There is a state zoning law, in fact, and I don't think there's any question at all about the legality or constitutionality of the state taking action in this area. But again, I would hope that communities will comply with the law, not because they are forced to, not because if they don't, they're going to lose access to different state programs, grant money like the MassWorks program and Housing Choice and other state funds, but because communities do it because it's the right thing to do. Because we all have an interest in the future of the greater Boston region. We all have a vested interest in our children and our grandchildren, being able to live in this community, in this area. We all have an interest in our seniors being able to continue to, retire with dignity here. And so we have no choice. We have to take action. And this new law is certainly not a silver bullet, but I do think it is part of the overall solution for what we need to do to make housing more affordable. All right, let's see. We have a question from Brian. Plans to show that all students receive meals. Wow, this is a really timely question, Brian. The reason it's very timely is because I actually this morning visited an elementary school in my district. It happened to be in Reading, and it was a visit that was organized by the Project Bread, which is the organization that really championed universal free school meals in Massachusetts. And then also we were joined by folks from the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, as well as a number of school nutrition and food service directors from Reading, but also from some other schools as well. And basically we were touring the school cafeteria. We got to see the new equipment that they've been able to purchase because of universal free school meals providing more resources. We were able to actually sample some of the food, including smoothies that were really nutritious and delicious. We saw the kids just really excited about the food. They're doing much more with local, local produce that they're getting. They formed a lot more partnerships with local suppliers, local farms. And a lot of this is possible because Massachusetts made a commitment to universal free school meals for all students. This was after the pandemic when other states, discontinued universal free school meals, and they went back to, students and families having to fill out forms and prove their income eligibility, and having stigma for students who are qualified for free and reduced lunch. Well, Massachusetts made the decision, and we're one of, only I think half a dozen states or so that said, no, the state's gonna step up, and we're using fair share money, which is also known as the millionaire's tax, to provide the funding to ensure universal free school meals. So that has enabled, one of the benefits of that is not only that all kids getting breakfast and lunch, parents not having, and guardians not having to worry about that, but it is also really increasing the nutrition and the healthfulness of the food. And I saw that directly this morning, and I certainly, from what I'm hearing from superintendents and food service directors in a lot of communities, including Malden, that has been one of the major benefits, is that because more students are essentially now eating meals in school, and then those get reimbursed by the federal government and now by the state government, there's a much larger budget available to purchase higher quality food, and also to update and replace equipment so you can have more scratch cooking, things like that. And we're going to keep at it. I think there's still room to continue to improve to make sure that our school meals are as nutritious as possible. But I definitely think we're on the right track now. All right. So Wendy's also mentions about free school meals in our K-12 schools, and then your question is about childcare for infants. Do not. You're raising a good point here. So I would say, when we're talking preschool students that are being served in preschools in our public schools, our K through 12 schools, or in communities that participate in what's known as the CPPI program, those children would benefit from universal free school meals. So that would address some of the children in kind of preschool. But you are right, there's plenty of other children that are in, community-based programs, and don't, that cost isn't currently covered. Our early education and childcare system, one of the challenges is that it operates very differently, from our K-12 school system. And the vision we have, and I was talking about this earlier with the Early Ed Act that the Senate passed, and the very significant increases in funding we've included in the state budget last year, and again we're working on this year, is really trying to improve the quality of childcare, make it accessible for more families. The additional funding that we are providing, like for example the C3 grant program, which almost all early ed providers are now receiving. And again, we're one of the only states that's providing this funding that was available during the pandemic from the federal government. But when that dried up, the state kind of stepped in, and we've been funding that. And it's it's almost $500 million. It's a very significant commitment. That money, can be used by our early education providers for food. I mean, we don't tell them how to use it, so they can use it for increasing the pay for their educators, for benefits, for hiring more staff, for materials, and they certainly can use it as well to help cover the cost of food. And we know that with inflation, obviously the cost of food's gone up a lot. So that is one of the ways we know programs are using it. But you do make a good point. We don't currently have a separate way that we're covering all of that food like we are now for K through 12. And I think that's something, for us to certainly, for the legislature to certainly consider going forward. So I appreciate that feedback. All right. We've got a question here from James about the impending Proposition 2.5 override in Melrose, and referencing the Senate's announcement that we are looking to expand access to community college, and whether that's displacing local aid. So appreciate, James, your question and coming to the town meeting. I know you also sent an email to me earlier today, and I did read that, and so I appreciate where you're coming from here, and again that you joined the town hall. I guess the way I would answer this is to say I certainly can understand, at least on the surface, how when folks see that the state government, and this is true, at any level of government, whether it's local, state, or federal, if you're spending money on one area, that then you're not spending that money on another area, and we all we debate all the time, what are our priorities, and how do we best use the limited tax resources that we have, and so what I would say here is that we are actually in the Senate budget, significantly increasing the support we are providing to our cities and towns, including Melrose. For example, the state Senate's budget has almost $320 million increase in funding for schools. That's known as Chapter 70. The House of Representatives also had a similar increase in their budget. So that will be helping Melrose and other cities and towns. This Senate's budget is also increasing what is known as unrestricted local aid by 3% over last year, even though the state's budget is not expected to grow by 3%. And that's money that the city can use for public safety or library, any services they want. So we're basically increasing funding both for the schools and for other services. And there's a variety of other areas of the budget which are supporting local cities and towns. That I can assure you that is always a priority, for me and for my colleagues. But at the same time, the state budget is $50 billion plus. There's a lot of different areas within the budget. There's a lot of money that goes into healthcare, that goes into housing, that goes into early education. We've been talking about during this town hall. Money that does go to higher education already, to MBTA. So, it's not necessarily that $1 going here, not going here, doesn't go there, or vice versa. These are all areas that need to be funded. And, we are making a commitment, it's true, to increasing support for higher education. But I would argue that's in large part because our state has neglected and underfunded higher education for many years now. We're very lucky in Massachusetts to have fantastic private colleges and universities. We have some of the best in the world. And I think partially as a result of that, we haven't done enough to support our public higher education system. So not just community colleges, but also our state colleges, our UMass system. And we're trying to rectify that now because, for many of our young people, public higher education is the best option. It's the most affordable. It's the most accessible. And again, if they want to go to private colleges here or in other states, wonderful. But we want to make sure, every young person who wants to get a higher education can do so, and that it's affordable, and they don't have to graduate with a crushing debt burden. So that's what we're trying to address here. I would also note that we're using a dedicated source of funding to provide this community college program. It's known as the Fair Share Amendment, also known as the Millionaire's Tax. Voters approved that in 2022 at the ballot, as you may recall. And that money has to be used only for educational purposes and for transportation. So we certainly are using some of that for K-12 as well. For example, that's how we're funding universal school meals that we talked about. That's using that same money. And obviously Melrose is benefiting a lot from that, as are other communities. But it's also intended to be used for public higher education. And that's how we're managing to support this effort to expand access to community college. So we are going to expect students to still, get all the federal aid that they qualify for based on their income level. And then the state would basically be just covering the difference in terms of tuition and fees, so that, again, we don't want to have cost burdens be the reason that young people, can't go on to higher education, whether, again, that's a 2-year or a 4-year degree. We're also increasing financial aid for our 4-year public colleges as well. So, I understand where you're coming from on this, but hopefully my answers, has helped to provide some of the context around both our continued absolute, importance of supporting local aid to cities and towns, because we do recognize the fiscal struggles that they are absolutely facing. And at the same time that we also have a responsibility, to fund, whether not just higher education, but also high quality healthcare, the MBTA, housing, and other areas that we are discussing tonight. All right. Let's see. We have a question here about some of our communities, Wakefield and Stoneham. And I believe this may or actually have even passed in Winchester already, have passed what's known as tobacco-free generation laws, and discussions about making this statewide. So I'm definitely supportive of this policy. I was, I currently serve as the chair of the Education Committee, but before that, I actually was the chair. I served as the chair of the Public Health Committee, and really enjoyed that work. And one of the bills that I helped to get shepherd across the finish line was signed into law by, I believe it was Governor Baker at the time, was raising the legal age to purchase tobacco products to 21, which we totally take for granted now, but was not the case in Massachusetts about 10 years ago. And so I worked on this issue of trying to prevent, tobacco and nicotine addiction among our young people, including with, e-cigarettes. And I do think that this policy is kind of the next frontier. And so I'm very pleased to see that our, Brookline was the first community, I think, in the country to enact this policy. And I think it's very exciting to see the leadership of a number of our communities, thanks to the local health departments, local health directors, Maureen Busby, who's our tobacco control coordinator in this region, and the fact that we're taking the lead here to make sure that, our next generation, will not be addicted to nicotine, will not incur all of the, lifetime of health harms and all the healthcare costs that come with that, that come with that addiction. All right. So our next topic here is about our local community media stations, and we're very lucky, and all the communities I represent have local cable access or community media, and they became even more important during the pandemic because, of course, when so many of our government meetings went remote, we relied upon our community media stations to cover those meetings, to live stream them, and to also offer hybrid meeting access where you can have both an in-person component and a remote component. And that's been just terrific for folks, who have disabilities or have transportation challenges or mobility issues, childcare responsibilities, and all that, to be able to participate, from home or from work when they want to attend, a school committee meeting, a conservation commission meeting, city council, what have you. But one of the challenges that's facing our community media stations is that the way that they're funded is that there's a fee that is on your on people's cable TV bills, and that's been true for a long time. As more and more people are cutting the cord on cable and just going to streaming services like Netflix, that means that the revenues that has traditionally funded our community media stations is declining. And so this is a big challenge. Either they're going to, just literally go out of business, or it's going to fall to the local municipal budgets to pick up that cost. And, we were talking about that already earlier this evening, that our cities and towns already have fiscal challenges, just funding the schools and public safety and everything else. So they're not really in a position to pick up this cost. So I have been working with Mass Access, who's the organization that represents all of our community media, and Representative Joan Machino. And together we've filed a bill that would provide an alternative funding source to make up for the lost revenue. And I'm excited to let you know that just last week, that bill was reported out of committee with favorably. It was redrafted a little bit, but we're all happy with it. And that was the first time the bill has actually gotten a favorable review from the legislative committee, responsible for this issue area. So that's great news. I want to encourage folks to continue advocating for it. And next step, hopefully, is to see if we can get this bill, onto the floor of the Senate and the House. And I may also consider filing this language even as a budget amendment as part of the Senate's budget debate. So definitely looking for ways to move this forward and support our local community media. All right, let's see. We have time for hopefully a few more questions. So keep them coming. And really appreciate all the great, topics folks have been bringing up tonight, and really good questions and discussion. So Jennifer's asking about Senate Bill 263, which is the bill that deals with improving early literacy instruction. And so Jennifer, I don't know if you were with us earlier this evening. Somebody else asked also about what we're doing to improve early literacy and to really improve our outcomes when it comes to our students' literacy and reading proficiency. I spoke earlier about how critical this is. And, I am a supporter of this bill. The Education Committee looked very carefully for over a year at all the research on best practices in early literacy. We looked at what other states have been doing. We met with all different stakeholder groups, and the result of that was essentially we made some changes to Senate Bill 263, but it's basically the bones of it are still intact. And that bill we released favorably back in February, I believe. So the bill is now pending in the on the House of Representatives in their Ways and Means Committee, and in the Senate Ways and Means Committee. So yeah, we definitely need folks to continue to advocate. If you're not my constituent, definitely advocate to your state senator. I definitely encourage folks to advocate to your state representative as well. And that, you can also reach out to our either the House Ways and Means Committee or the Senate Ways and Means Committee. If you need help doing that, just touch base with my office, and we can let you know how to do that. And we just need to continue to make the case for why this definitely is part of the solution to improve in literacy teaching and learning, and to help make sure all of our youngest students have the best possible opportunities to succeed in school. So we have a follow-up question here in terms of the plastic. Well, what I was, I think the best opportunity to really make the progress we want to make when it comes to updating the bottle bill and again addressing single-use plastics like a plastic bag ban, polystyrene, is very likely to have that be part of the climate bill. That again, I expect. Well, I know for sure the Senate's going to be taking up a climate bill before the end of July. Hopefully the House of Representatives will as well. So I think it's a matter of continuing to advocate, again, with senators, with representatives, with the leadership in the House and the Senate. And Plastic Free Mass as a coalition is doing a great job. I think the coalition kind of knows who the key players are and is communicating with them, like the Senate President, Speaker of the House, et cetera. And I think we just got to keep that up and keep making sure that, again, as we're thinking about the various strategies to continue to address climate change and make our communities, more resilient, that we also are addressing, our plastics crisis as part of that. So we have another issue here, which relates to our transportation network companies like Uber and Lyft. So this is also a major issue that you may have seen has been in the news a lot. And there are several potential ballot questions actually that are currently being reviewed. In fact, they've been several of these ballot questions have been filed. They've been making their way through the process. They are currently being under review by the state Supreme Judicial Court to see if they qualify to go forward onto the ballot. And if they do, they will be on the ballot in November for all voters in Massachusetts to consider. They relate to the status of drivers, whether they're employees or independent contractors. But the area, and it's a major fight over worker rights and worker conditions. I'm a strong supporter of these drivers who I think are often, taken advantage of by Uber and Lyft. That these drivers, should get better pay and benefits and better working conditions. And one of the best ways to do that is by enabling them to come together, form a union, and to be able to collectively bargain for better pay and benefits and working conditions with Uber and Lyft. And that's why I've been championing a bill that would create the ability for them to form a union. And that bill is pending in the legislature. And one of the ballot questions that's been proposed is basically my bill that would essentially also allow drivers to go. There would create a process in our state that they could come together and form a union to then negotiate, in a collective bargaining format, with the TNC companies. So keep your eye on this issue. It's definitely a hot topic. And again, it may turn out, if the legislature, doesn't take action on this issue, that everybody will be essentially have the opportunity to weigh in when you vote in November. All right, so we're coming up to the end of tonight's town hall, and looks like the last question relates to the Middlesex Fells, which is such a incredible, wonderful recreational resource for all of us in our region. I personally, I'm in the Middlesex Fells at least once a week, and just really enjoy it, like I know a lot of you do. But we have had concerns with folks who don't follow the rules in the Fells, who they let their dogs run off leash, don't pick up after their dogs, go off the trails, and that really does harm the enjoyment of other people. It also threatens natural resources in the Fells. And so we have been working on this issue for some time now. Representative Paul Donato and I founded, and we co-chair the Middlesex Fells Legislative Caucus. The state representatives and in our communities are also all members of the caucus, and as well as a number of my colleagues in the Senate. And we work with the Friends of the Fells, we work with other stakeholder groups, we work with our municipalities, we work with the DCR, state police, on efforts to improve safety in the Fells and sustainability. One of the new initiatives is called the Be Kind campaign, which you may or may not have heard about, but hopefully you will hear more about in the weeks and months to come, which is really a PR campaign that the caucus helped develop, but now is being rolled out by the DCR to promote, a culture of respect in the Fells, respect for the nature, respect for each other. And this is going to be a campaign that eventually the DCR is planning to roll out statewide. So that's exciting. We're also looking for ways to increase enforcement in the Fells of the rules to make sure, again, that it's a place that's safe and welcoming, can be enjoyed by everyone. So that's what we're doing. All right, Paul, I think we're kind of at the end of this evening's town hall. I, again, really want to thank you all for joining us. I really appreciated, all the different questions. You raised a lot of good topics and issues. And, definitely follow up with me in my office if there's, something we didn't answer, or if if there's, further information you wanted to dig into with us. You can always call me. The number's on the screen. You can email me. You can follow us on social media and communicate with us that way. We also have office hours, in person and virtual, and in each of the 6 communities I have the privilege to represent. And anybody can come to office hours. You don't need an appointment. You can just stop in. Those details are on our website. So again, look forward to staying in touch with you, and have a good night, and take care.